Yeah, so my name is Jose Mesa. I've been with Anaconda about roughly 8 months. And I will go through, before that, I was actually in the oil and gas industry, and before that in the aerospace. So I think this thought is kind of related to that. It's like, how can we navigate career adjustments in times of uncertainty? There's a lot going on, right, with the pandemic effects, right? While we passed those 2 years in the pandemic, everything changed, and a lot of the industry. So that's what I want to share here. Just discuss, a couple of tips or things actually that I went through, and best practices to maybe navigate your career better. So let's get started. So on the agenda, we're gonna have a little bit about me. I'm gonna go through, as I mentioned, high level my degrees, but how I actually move around and how I actually was able to integrate multiple, disciplines, and actually the tech, right? Um, and then we're gonna have kind of like the first two are about that. Then we're gonna go through how can I actually grow it, right? So how can I actually grow my skills in tech, and then why, right? Why those skills are important nowadays, right? Which most of us will know that answer. But I'm just gonna bring a bit of insight of my experience being not in tech and coming from a non-tech background. And then we're gonna go and welcome Anaconda's cloud platform, which we're gonna talk a little bit about what started here and different things that are really excited about Anaconda. And then we're gonna close and have some questions. And I want to make this really interactive. So please, if you have any questions, post, and the host will actually bring it to me. I definitely want to hear experiences if this resonates with you. All right, so who I am. So I actually started my undergrad doing civil engineer, so totally not tech. And it was really traditional engineer structural, doing a lot of earthquake engineering. And then I'm from Puerto Rico, so a lot of earthquakes analysis and stuff. And that's when I first get started to numerical analysis, right? It was a lot of modeling. And then I started doing a lot of like wave modeling. And I have a passion, I guess, because I'm from an island, but I have a passion for wave and structure. So I was like, how can I actually mix it too? So I ended up getting a couple internships and then jumped to University of Michigan, where the closest to what I wanted was the naval architecture and marine engineer department. Um, and so I decided to go for my grad school there and do fluid structure interaction, which is kind of like the mix that I was looking for numerically. So a lot of programming, modeling, and software, right, behind the scenes, but with the actual technical background of naval architecture. And in the meantime, I got a job with Boeing. So that's the reason that in the middle, I actually did a master's in aerospace. So it's a little bit really broad, right? Because when I started, I was okay, this is kind of what I want to do. And then I was in Boeing for a time where it was all experimental. So a lot of like data, sensors, how can we actually have better, data quality? How do we use that data to help our customers to understand pretty much the aircraft maintenance requirements? So it was a big data, I will call it at that point. It was not nowadays it's a big movement, right? But when I started at Boeing, it was just collection of data. We were not thinking about how to do it, optimize it, better or optimize the processes. We just care about record the data, give me some results. That's it, right? So that's what and again, everything started kind of like fitting, right, as I was moving through my career. But started doing modeling, then big data or data acquisition and how to store that and how to actually use that for leverage for information for what we wanted for the aircraft. In this case, was fatigue. And then naval architecture, where my PhD was in fluid structure interaction, which was my first exposure to open source. I was doing CFD, which is computational fluid dynamics, and we were using OpenFOAM at that time with my current advisor. And it was my first exposure to Linux, software tech. I would say that was my first big, big, big exposure to it. But after all that, now I'm actually in the tech industry. I'm with Anaconda, been with Anaconda 8 months, and next slide I will go through why that happened or how was everything fitting. But I started doing a lot of data science and software development. So that's overall who I am, and I do have a passion for reaching, doing research and education. So my journey to tech, as I mentioned, started doing civil aircraft engineer modeling. Then I jumped to my PhD, where I was doing more ship hydrodynamics, doing open source, where we were using like OpenFOAM, and that was where I learned about open source, right? And believe it or not, before that in my undergrad, I never heard about it. So I was like, oh, what is that? How that works? Why do we have like free stuff, right? So that was my first time that I started hearing, and it was cool to see that community and the CFD getting together to get better methods, more faster methods, right? That usually everybody complains about CFD takes so long. So a lot of the focus was how can we work together and collaborate to make things better, do benchmarking and avoid other people doing the same things, right? At that point, we were implementing packages or features in OpenFOAM. We don't want other folks doing exactly the same thing. So I started getting that idea of a community, right? Um, and again, as I mentioned, that was my first exposure. But at the same time, I was doing my Boeing because I did got a full time offer, and they were great that they allowed me to do an educational leave of absence. So I was like going back and forth. So I was like learning software coding at school, but then doing data and more experimental for full aircraft at work. So, and it was a great combination of the two, but I was never linking both of them. So literally was side-loaded. And that's the reason that it resonates this topic to me in this presentation, because I was like, we sometimes have those occasions that we have like exposure to things, but we don't do the integration well, or we don't know how to integrate it, right? So that was one of my cases. I was doing pretty much big things or things that we do in tech nowadays, right? But I was doing totally side-loaded. And then I jumped to the offshore or oil and gas industry based on my background in naval architecture. So it was a fit. So I came down to Texas, Houston, and you can see that big platform. But primarily my role was facility engineer. So I was designing these platforms. And when I got there, and I'm really grateful for a coworker, Matt Kramer, that he actually been doing Python for about 8 to 9 years. I was using MATLAB, C++ before that, a little bit of Python. But I will say when I got there to my company, he was already using Python. And he started like, dude, we need to pair. We need to start doing, cool stuff with Python. And that was my, I will say, first jump into what Python is. And I love it because of the community. I mentioned the open source community and that idea. I embrace it. So seeing the community in Python and all this and these conferences, right, and everybody collaborating was fascinating for me. So that was one of the things that I was like, makes sense, open source, right? So we already know it's open source. Comparing even licenses was a headache. Sometimes we were, in a private sector, right? It's like, oh, you don't have enough licenses, so you got to wait there. So I was like, I got to learn it. So I jumped to it, and doing that, a lot of my designs and my processes were like, okay, how can I do my job better? That's when that question started popping up. I was not in the tech industry, but I was an engineer, really curious about tech. But then I was more kind of inclined to figure out how can I make my design, my processes, my day-to-day easier, faster. Sometimes we have to make quick turnarounds, which cost a lot of money. So how can I make that, less impactful for my company? And less impactful for me, right? Because I have to go, and a lot of the processes were manual. So we started doing a lot of like optimization, and everything was on Python. We will still do a lot of dashboarding, data science, because we have tons of data that were not unused, that were unused actually. And then we started leveraging all the data that we have from sensors. So I got involved on that and doing predictive models. So I got heavily into data science for the first, I would say 3 years or 3 years and a half. And in a portion of that, I was doing predictive model for machine learning, dashboarding or storytelling, right? And it was a private sector, right? So I have to have a business case for it, right? And talk to management and all that. So it was a lot of that. And then the other component was you're still an engineer, so you got to do your design, your analysis. So we were using modeling, and we started doing wrappers. And that's what I started getting more into what software development is. We were doing like APIs and wrappers to APIs to optimize our design and just to pretty much do the full optimization of all the different cases that we have to run. For example, that platform there, we will have a load case that might be 500, 400, 1,000 cases, and you might only be changing one parameter. So you don't want to be clicking, right? So we start optimizing all of that, and we create our own wrappers internally. So it was great. And again, that was like the first time that I was able to start integrating everything that I have learned in the past with my day-to-day basis. And then I jumped to Anaconda because I did wanted to keep growing my skills in software, data science more heavily. So it was the right time to move, and I decided, I just want to be in this industry, in this community, and learn more. from each other. So that's a little bit of my story, and now we'll go a little more faster. But why do we need to grow skills in tech, right? If you think about it, and we all, again, will have our own opinion of this, but one of the primary things is digital transformation. When I was in the oil and gas industry, it's a little bit slower of an industry in terms of embracing new technologies. They also want to go to this safe zone, right, of things instead of just experimenting new things and trying it. Um, so it was harder to bring new technologies and say, hey, you got to use this machine learning for this, right? So it was a little bit hard to sell. But digital transformation, I guess all companies in the world are becoming aware that we need to change the way that we're doing things. They're not optimized. We're doing a lot of manual process. Design typically takes months, 6 to 8 to maybe 10, where you can, if you incorporate a lot of these tools, you can actually do it in about 2 3 months maybe, right? And then have more time for revisions, and you can have even more design options to actually evaluate and be more cost effective. So all those factors come into play, and they're becoming aware that we need to change the way that we do things. So when I was there, my last year, we did this big digital transformation, and part of it is like there were pretty much kind of embracing the idea of avoiding silos and do cross collaboration, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I will say agile development is a big thing now also. So before it was like you have a design at the beginning, you go all the way through that life cycle, and then you're done. And then let's say that you have a better option. It's like, well, we already spent 10 months, right? That was a lot of money, effort, time. And we're, pretty much behind schedule. So we cannot do anything. And they just go, right? And maybe you have a better option that you figure out. And it's harder to improve for what you did, right? So again, they're also embracing agile development, and this idea of doing, trying, checking, let's do it again, and let's have MVPs and let's keep actually improving, right? So that is becoming kind of like a DNA of a lot of the companies, a lot of the industries. So again, digital transformation, agile ideas, and how we're doing is changing in all the industries. So we have to be aware of that. And the last thing is kind of like everything. The world is like the Internet of Things, right? That's a word that everybody uses, but everything is becoming digital nowadays. And as we move, you can see that tech is getting involved in every single field, every single industry. So it's becoming kind of like a must-have nowadays. So again, digital transformation, the type of development and agile that we're doing, and kind of like being an integrator of the technology with your technical field, right? So it's really important. So I think those will be the more formal reasons why you got to learn it. Now, my takeaway, which are personal, facilitate just from job transition. So during the pandemic, a lot of people had to switch jobs, right? And they end up being a total different industry, not in what they used to work for 10, 15 years. So this helps, right? Because you can adapt easier if you have that core component of tech, if you have that mindset and you switch industry, you still have the mindset, right? So you still will be thinking, how can I optimize my processes? How can I do it better? How can I actually help my company to thrive, right? How can I leverage all the information? So a lot of that is actually part of it, or essential, right, in this process. The other thing is supports day-to-day process optimization. As I mentioned, is like, how can I do my things better every day? Doesn't matter what you do, but how can I do it better, right? And be efficient at it. And then one big thing that I've been seeing is like in the past, there was a lot of focus on having subject matter experts in a particular, focus area. In, I call it like your lane, right? And you stay in that lane. Now and that actually involve a lot of silos, right? So you'll do your thing. When you're done, you pass it over. And it's like throwing it to the fence. And I experienced this in the aerospace, in the oil and gas, and several actual industries. And then the next person will do their thing, right? And we has been talks that maybe it's not the best way. Maybe we need to collaborate better, because again, we can optimize that process in between, and we can do better. We can have better options at the end, not waiting towards this all the end and say, oh, we got to change this and then go back, right? So we need to have subject matter experts, but still those subject matter experts can communicate through tech. As I mentioned, it can be the integrator, right? So a lot of that can come from using tech skills, right? So it's really important that you can still have your own core of expertise, Don't get me wrong, but it's awesome if you learn tech tools and skills so that can help you to integrate better with the cross-functional fields, right? And the last one is who don't want to be stable and marketable, right? So during the pandemic, if you have this type of soft skills, it was easier. I would not say easy, but it was a little bit easier than other folks and candidates that didn't have it, right? Because you have more skills, right, in your belt that you can use, right, and you can, as I mentioned, that mindset can help you out. So security, stability, and like that guy on the bottom jumping with the money is like stability, and it's really good to feel that you're stable or that it's a little bit easier of a transition if something happens, right? Like it already happened. Um, so now the question is like, okay, I know it's important, it makes sense, but how do you grow it? And when I was doing this slide, I started thinking about it. I was like, okay, let me just put the core one. So self teaching or self learning, code challenges, courses, forums, you can do that. Then contributing to open source is a big one. So get involved in, repos, follow them, do books, and you will see they might have a tiny mistake. You can help out and get involved on that. Follow the community and the trends. So that's a big one. Um, big one. I would say it's that third one. Learn by doing. So just be willing to take risk, try new things, and see how it goes, right? And then if it doesn't work, at least it doesn't work, right? So for the next time when we're in a very similar situation, you will know, right? You will know that that's not an option, right? So don't be willing to take those risks and learn by doing. And the last one is like reading and book clubs, and actually you can see that on that the book clubs is really important, and I just started to join one, and it is awesome because you can start get that community feeling, the tech industry. You can talk to the experts of books and stuff like that and learn from their experiences, right, and their processes, like we're doing today in this talk. So I will say those are the formal ones that I saw, but still it's like when I started, even myself, that I was not a tech background, it's like, what I wish for. All right, the things that I will wear, cool, or if I did, right? Um, and for me, again, this is really personal, but it was like nowhere to start. It's like it's a big industry. It's a lot of roles, a lot of specialties, right? So where did I start, right? Like which area should I do, or things like that. So that's a big question, right? Understanding the market needs for me, I will again, it's kind of pretty tied to that. It's like what the market is needing. So what is the trend? What is the roles that are being pushed or the need of the technology industry to keep pushing, right, the boundaries. So it's really important that we understand that. And then to do that, it's like be part of our community. But then it's like Python, yeah, we have a big, strong community, but and it's a little bit easier. But if you start in other areas like the open forum and things like this, like how can I be part of that community? How can I start contributing and being more involved, right? And then leveraging your tech every day to day, as I mentioned, it's like sometimes we still get used to do things the way that works or that we're used to, and don't take those risks, right? And try new things. And if you are willing to do that and start trying at your job, which is kind of what I did actually in my oil and gas employer, is like I think this is a good idea. Let me just start trying to do things, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, right? Um, thankfully, most of the times they did work, right? So it looks good, but still, I took those learnings, and next time it's like, no, we're not going to do that. I don't think it's the best option because of this learning that we had. So, and then make sure that what do you need to become marketable. What I mean there is like, should I be data science, should I be a software engineer, should I be data engineer? So it's like, again, it's like that understanding of what you like, what you expect long-term goals are, with your job. Even if you're not in the tech industry, how can you mix it up is a big thing. And the last thing will be to pretty much is like try to understand the market, right? The needs and how they're going. And I think the balance between those factors is what's going to help you out. And this is something that you learn by experience. And again, I put those in there because they're thoughts that I had when I was starting, and it was hard. It was hard to get them all in one place or ask questions or understand them, right? So you got to go through it. So I'm really happy to announce, right, the Anaconda just have a kind of like a release of something that we call the starter tier. Um, and what it is, so as I mentioned in my bio, I support Nucleus, right? And Anaconda Nucleus is one of the things that it's trying to get all those things together into one, right? So as I mentioned, you can be in book reading clubs, you can be on forums, you can be on courses, you can be on, kind of like uh, podcasts, right? And you can start thinking about all the different areas, and it was hard to figure, to get all of that in one place, right? So again, where should I go? Where should I start? Where should I follow? And I think the idea here with Anaconda Nucleus is to push, right, or help the community to integrate a little bit more, right? So it's like, let's just try to get a centralized data, and I call it like a centralized data science, but it's not only data science, right? Platform that you can pretty much found all that in one place, so it's easier for you to get started, right? So that's kind of like the main idea of this. And now starter tier, if you want to start getting this, because what we're talking here in this talk is more about how can I grow those skills, right? We talk about why, but how can I grow them, or where to start, or which area. So I think this was actually done for those people, right? For those persons. It was more for people that don't know how to start, or don't have a good idea how to start, or make it easier for even for experts, right? To help those other young folks that want to start. So we do have forums, and now in starter tier they do have what is called Anaconda Learning and Anaconda Notebooks. Um, and essentially in the learning, it's just a couple courses that we have, and I just gonna, okay, this is not actually running, so I will do it live really quick. But essentially we do have on Nucleus, if you go there, we're now going to have like a suite of courses that you can take. And again, it's created by experts. Not only for now, I think there has been Anaconda employees, but I think we open maybe in the future for more people to contribute. So again, that's what we want. We want a community getting together and integrated. We have forums that you can go and participate. And again, what we're trying to do is to help those questions like, okay, what is a trend? How can I move around? If I want to learn this, what are the best options, right? If I want to do that. So again, it doesn't have to be an Anaconda product, just to be really clear. What we're trying to do is to help, right, to integrate the community. And it's a big part of it. And what I will do really quick, if I can, is try to show this really quick. Um, Let me just share my screen and hope everybody can see that. Can everybody see that? Yes. Okay. So yeah, if you go there, I'm already logged in. But a cool thing is like now we have a couple courses, so you can go in there. You can go by yourself and just go and have different like self-learning courses that you can go. You have different kind of like topics, right? So you can jump around, understand the courses, understand the authors, right? And again, um, this will keep growing for now, but we have a couple of them. But really important now is you have like notebooks in the cloud, right? So you don't have to even install anything on your machine to start programming. And I just did a quick example here where I uploaded Excel file, right, where I have some data, and I just created my Jupyter notebook. And it's really simple. It's just that you start running things here without even figuring out, anything, like installing packages or anything like that. So that is all done behind the scenes. So again, what is it helps a lot of new users to get familiarized with, you know, pretty much programming, follow the courses, do their own thing day to day. Doesn't have to be right. So now data scientists have been using this for a while to share right knowledge between them. But again, you can do plotting, you can do a little bit of everything, and I don't want to go too much into the product. But what I'm saying is like these are type of things that I wish right that I had for a time. And let me stop sharing right there really quick. Those are the type of things that I wish I had for a time, and it was hard to find everything in one place, and that's what we're trying to actually now kind of like try to help integrate the community right together on that. And I think it's a great tool if you're interested on it. And then let me go really quick and I reshare that presentation. Else I just gonna share my screen and I can just let's do that. All right, let me just wrap up the last couple minutes. But what I was now is the closing thoughts. So again, as I mentioned, this talk was not about the product. It was more about um, actually understanding that we need to be willing to explore new fields. Don't feel the pressure of I have to be a subject matter expert in something. I think even for one of the book clubs that I'm actually, I'm a participant on, it was a question about should we be learning about everything or should we just more focusing on something? And I think kind of like the understanding is that you can be a core, right, subject matter expert in one part, but it's always good to understand other areas around you so you can help in that flow, right, and optimize that processes. So be willing to explore new fields and learn, right, how you can do best, books, reading, courses, mentoring, whatever, right? But be willing to explore, right? One big thing that I learned about this is take initiative. And when I was doing all this, um, again, when I was in the oil and gas, I was taking courses, right? And I was able to talk to my employer and say, hey, I need support for this because I want to do that. So that's my third bullet is like ask for support, right? Even for your career employer, let them know where your career goals are, the reason why you want to do it. I bet that they're gonna embrace it because nowadays, if you have a strong business case with tech and to optimize processes, why not, right? And then become part of the community. So that's really, really, really important. Be part of the community, be active in forums, be active, in book clubs, or be active in packages. Just be there, right? Conferences, and just contribute to this because that's how we're building all these products and this amazing community. Or what Python is today is because of the community that we have, right? So keep it up, right? And really, last one is be willing to fail and keep trying. I think that's super, super important. Um, it's really hard sometimes to take risks, but it's important just to take them, right? And not everything's going to work out all the time, but you need to learn. You also going to learn something positive from what we call a failure, which is not a failure, right? It's a learning. I like to use that concept of learning instead of actually saying that it's a failure, right? So um, so yeah,
Hi,
I would
Jose.
say
Sorry to
yeah.
interrupt. Oh, I guess you're ending. We're out of time.
Yeah. So no, thank you very much for everything. Thank you for your time. And if we have any time for questions, or if I have any questions, let me know. And yeah, here is my email. And if you want to contact me, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.